Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Talkin podcast. The guy to my right needs no introduction. That's Jordan Falls. I'm Nick Delahanty. We both come from keeping it heel on fan-sided. Great time to be a Tar Heel fan. Carolina's 3-0. They're looking to go to 4-0 as they take on Pittsburgh this weekend. Jordan, how's it going and how you feeling in regards to this football team so far?
It's going great. 3-0. Wasn't really too close last week against Minnesota, so we'll recap that and then look ahead to the first ACC matchup of the year, and it just happens to come on the road.
I mean, it was great to not have a stressful situation in Chapel Hill this past weekend. But regardless, Carolina's 3-0. And one of the things that we've talked about is the different ways that this team has won games early on in the year. Game 1 against South Carolina, the defense was a star. You fast forward to week 2, it was the running game. And in this past week, it was Drake May and Nate McCollum in the passing game. What a performance from McCollum, especially early on in that game.
Yeah, it's really first true game as a Tar Heel, and man, did the offense need that shot in the arm from as a playmaker from the wide receiver core, and they got it with McCollum with 15 catches, one off the school record. I think if the offensive coordinators and Mac would have known that, they might have tried to get him the ball one or two more times to let him break the record in his first game. But he did play 9 snaps against App, but it was really nice to see McCollum back at full strength.
I think one of the things that we've talked about and everybody seems to be talking about was everybody was concerned with the performance of Drake May early on. Not to say that he was playing terribly, but when you looked at his numbers, they didn't scream Heisman Trophy candidate. But in week 3, Carolina went into that game knowing that they had the advantage in the air. And they weren't going to do it in the running game. The running game was essentially non-existent, but May stepped up when they needed him to. And having McCollum back is such a big boost. Because think about it. The beginning of the year, we're thinking Tez Walker on one side, McCollum on the other, and Pacor in the middle. And first 2 weeks, McCollum and Walker were nowhere to be found. And like you said, McCollum only saw those 9 snaps. So to have him back just kind of showed what kind of playmaker he could be for this team.
Yeah, I think Minnesota was a little unprepared for McCollum. I mean, not a lot of other targets got options, but that wasn't because they weren't being looked at. It was because McCollum was just open, and May was able to find him. May's numbers, I feel like the fans are getting a little hung up on Heisman numbers, and really we need to be looking at the fact that Carolina's 3-0. And May will be the first to tell you, yeah, the Heisman will be great, but he's team first, and as long as we're winning, the rest of it doesn't matter. And May has made some mistakes, 2 interceptions here last weekend and had 2 against South Carolina, but I don't think those are bad mistakes. I think those are things that can be tweaked. I think that's just May trying to be a playmaker, and we've talked about that. That can be one of his weaknesses, but nothing like too much to worry about there, because one of those was him getting hit against Minnesota. The other one, he just barely underthrown McCollum. 2 simple things that he can fix after he watches film this week.
Absolutely. And then one of the things that we always see with guys like Drake May and Caleb Williams, the spotlight's on them. Everybody's wondering what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, and how their team is going to respond. Drake May is a smart kid. He knows that if he's going to win the Heisman, Carolina has to make a push for the college football playoff. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. All he's trying to do is control winning games and how this team could do it. He obviously is their star, but he's the first one to tell you, the running game carried us today. The defense did wonders. He has the right mindset, but it's all the attention around him that's bringing all this into fruition, because let's face it, after last year, everybody thinks he's going to come in and throw for 400 yards every single week. It's not realistic.
No, and especially when you see a team like App, where 2 weeks ago they were determined that May was not going to beat them. Well, okay, we'll just run it down your throat for 250 yards or 300 yards. That's fine, and May's okay with that as long as we're winning football games. So I think the fans need to just back off the Heisman talk and let's just worry about winning football games, because no player's going to win the Heisman if they go 8-4 or 9-3. You're going to have to make a push at conference championship game, and like you said, the college football playoff. And to do that, you got to win football games, and that's the first step. we start getting in November, and then you start worrying about Heisman moments and plays and games. But for the time being, May's doing fine. A 400-yard passing game against Minnesota is nothing to shake your head at. Like I said, he did have the 2 interceptions, but still played very well against a really good secondary. But Minnesota was just keying in on that run game, and obviously that opened up the deep ball.
I gotta say this, they didn't get a lot of credit because obviously the score is lopsided, but Minnesota's defense is better than that score indicates.
Absolutely. 100%.
They're-
Minnesota's defense is great.
We were talking about it, and they are big up front.
I was at the game Saturday, and you look at them from the stadium, you're like, those are some big boys. Like they're huge up front, and on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. I thought our defense did a great job controlling the line of scrimmage. They gave us some big plays, things that just need to be worked on. But other than that, they were able to get some pressure on the quarterback to force some errors. And then our offensive line did a good job keeping May upright. He did have 2 sacks and did get under pressure a few times to force some interceptions. But for the most part, the offensive line did a good job against the big front of Minnesota.
Carolina did exactly what they had to do on offense. They got the ball, they scored. They took Minnesota out of their game. From that point on, Minnesota could not play their normal game. PJ Fleck loves to run the ball, loves to control the clock, but it was Carolina who was controlling the clock. And you could see that it made a difference, especially with their defense. They were gassed, especially when Carolina was going to the quick tempo. They couldn't keep up. They were trying to get subs in. It was a lot of mixing and matching. You could tell that they threw Minnesota off their game.
Yeah, and it started with Nate McCullum on that first drive, 3rd and 12, and May. Everybody was all in all by the pass by May. It was a little underthrown, but McCullum made a huge catch, basically being blanketed, and was able to catch it for a touchdown that started that. And then the defense let Minnesota get into the red zone and forced a tip pass and forced an interception, and that's where it just spiraled out of control for Minnesota. It's hard to play. We talked about it last week. It's hard to play ball control and stay in close games when you don't have a high-power offense if you start from behind. And Carolina offense did a good job getting out in front early.
And they did. And then the defense kept the offense on the field, essentially. A couple of key turnovers. A lot of what we've talked about in the past about Carolina's defense was they were the reason why this team couldn't take that next step. Now you're looking into this season and you're 3 games in, and is it time to start thinking that this group has what it takes to at least be suitable enough to help this team take the next step?
Yeah, it's definitely a question that we can start asking ourselves. I don't know that we're there yet. I don't know that we know much about us as far as defensively or offensively, other than what we've seen, because we've seen 3 different games, essentially 3 different games, won 3 different ways. So you don't know exactly what we have. We've been battle tested, probably more so than any other team in the country. A good SEC team that we thought was worse. After we beat them, we thought they were a little bit worse, but then they went down to Athens and hung with Georgia, and a Big Ten team that the last 2 years has finished top 10 in the country in defense. So, and then App State's no slouch. It's a good group of 5 team that always finds a way to win a big game. It seems like every year. Last year it was A&M. Remember all the way back to 2007, Michigan. It feels like App's always in those types of games. So Carolina being battle tested, and then on the defensive side of the ball, going back to the May interceptions, last year you turn the football over and it feels like the other team just goes and scores a touchdown. And this year, last week, May threw 2 picks and Minnesota got a total of 3 points out of them. And one of those started inside the Minnesota 20. So the Carolina defense did a good job. And when you don't have to feel like May has to be Superman or perfect, it kind of takes a little bit of that pressure off. He can be a little bit more aggressive and try to be more of a playmaker if that defense is behind of him, and that helps.
Yeah, for sure. When you don't want to have that pressure as a quarterback, knowing that if I turn the ball over, something bad's going to happen. And the Carolina defense has stepped up. There's been some notable guys on that defensive front. Every time you listen on the radio or on the broadcast booth, you hear the common names. You hear the Cedric Grays. You hear the Power Eccles. But there's so many more guys that are contributing, and it's so nice to see. Like it feels like a fresh breath of air with this group. And I don't want to speak too early because obviously we're still in non-conference play, but they've gotten some really good contributions from some guys who are really responding to having that opportunity.
Yeah, I feel like it's been a different guy every week too. The first week came on Rucker. The second week, Des Evans was a big factor in the Appalachian game. This past week, obviously, Power Eccles is a big name, but usually it's Cedric Gray leading the linebackers and tackles, and this week it was Power Eccles. Transfer Tavius Lane from in the secondary. He started making some plays last week. Don Chapman has been a guy to be on the lookout for against App and Minnesota. So you're starting to see some different names. And it's not the same guys every week. And that's big. And that's something that's Matt Brown's talked about, building depth. And outside the two linebackers, it feels like we have depth now. And that can be important in keeping guys healthy and just keeping fresh legs on the field, which ultimately helps the defense stay at their best ability.
Absolutely. Now, I got to ask, we're through conference play for now. They have more non-conference games later on in the year. But through the first 3 weeks of the season, how do you feel about this Carolina team from what we've seen through non-conference play?
Through non-conference play, you have to feel good as a Carolina fan. I mean, even going into the first game, we didn't know what we had going into the South Carolina game. It was a little uncertainty. So you definitely have to feel good going into this Pitt game and going into conference play. Conference is going to get tougher. We've seen that. I think preseason, we really didn't know what the conference had outside of what we assumed was Clemson, and now there's a lot of question marks there. But Miami's playing really well. Duke's playing really well. Florida State has some big wins. So the race for the conference championship is going to be a dogfight, and knowing that we've at least been battle tested by some non-conference opponents, I think that helps. Rather than playing, you see teams play the traditional FCS schools or group of fives. We played some really tough teams, and like we mentioned, Minnesota is really big. I don't know if we'll see another team that big all year. So knowing that we faced that type of competition, you have to feel really good going into conference play.
Yeah, absolutely. Some teams prefer to play, I don't want to say weaker schools and take light to them, but they like to play the weaker gimme schools and get their guys reps and use it to see what they have in the weights in the depth chart. But Carolina, I feel, strategically put this schedule together. Number one, you have expectations with Drake May at quarterback. So you're looking at this, you're saying, I want to get this team ready for when conference play rolls around. You have bigger thought process in mind. The other thing that you tend to see, and that's something that, for Carolina, it's great. Some of these teams go into their strength of schedule early on, and it doesn't benefit them later on in the year when they do have to get battle tested. Carolina's been there and done that. So I like it. I like where they are. I like how they have different ways to win. I don't really like the one-dimensional feel for some teams. Carolina has multiple ways, which is good. My biggest thing is, does the defense hold up? That's my biggest question mark.
Yeah, for sure. That would be mine. What would you give this? What's your grade for the team as a whole through non-conference play?
Wow, I would say I'm going to give them a B plus.
That's what I was gonna go with.
I'm going to give them a B plus, and here's why. There's two reasons. One, you're 3-0. Yeah, whatever way you look at it, you're 3-0. The second reason is, even though the App State game was ugly, even though you would like for that to be a little more cleaner, they took care of South Carolina, who proved that they're better than they were on opening night, and they took care of Minnesota, who has an elite defense. So for me, I can't be happier with that. Yeah, if App State game goes a little bit different, they get somewhere in the A- area. But for me, I got to go B plus. I don't want to get too excited here.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. B plus. I think, like you said, the app game. I don't think nobody expected us to cover the spread that Vegas put on us, but and which a lot of people use that as a judgment factor, and I don't think that was fair. But being able to win the games different ways, I'm not wild about the one-dimensional factor. Not that Carolina's one-dimensional, but they have been in two of their wins. In the app game, they were one-dimensional. In the run game, and the Minnesota game was the opposite with the pass game. I would like to see that even out a little bit more. Let's get a little bit closer to 50-50 run pass, maybe 350 pass, and then 150, 200 rushing. Still average 500 yards, but keep a balance throughout the same game instead of going game to game. And they might not get a chance to do that. Teams are keying in. App laid the blueprint on, hey, force May to throw or take the pass away and force the Carolina offense to run. And then Minnesota went the other way. So we might start to see teams do that. We don't know what Pitt will do yet, but I would like to see a little bit more multi-dimensional offense, and then take some of the mistakes away, and then on the defensive side of the ball, limit the big plays. I think that Minnesota had 6 plays or 6 runs of 10+ yards on Saturday. Limit those to 4 or 5 yard carries, and big chunk plays can kill a defense. And so far this year they haven't for the Tar Heels, but we don't want to get in that situation when you get into conference play that happens.
The one-dimensional thing, I think, is going to be a problem all year. I really do think that defenses, and especially conference defenses, are going to make an effort to stop one or the other. And I think that one is going to be trying to stop the passing game, especially with McCollum back. I think that now the blueprints there, they don't want Drake May to beat them. They want the running game to beat them. So they're going to do anything in their power to force the running game to make that happen. And until Carolina does that on a weekly basis, where they have a 100-yard rusher, they're really making it effective on the ground, I think teams are going to keep challenging it because they're thinking it's a fluke. It's a 2-week fluke. So until they get that, maybe say Omarion Hampton has 100 yards against Pitt and British Brooks comes back after the bye and he has 100 yards. Then they start to say, okay, maybe this isn't the right recipe here. But like you said, that one dimension, they got to kind of even it out a little bit more, keep them off balance, especially because you have such a gifted passer and runner in Drake May who could do so much with so little in certain situations.
Yeah, I think that's where if you keep the multi-dimensional where you can establish the run game early and then maybe pivot to a play action, open up the deep ball and let May take the top off the defense. That's what the ideal situation will be. I agree with you. I don't think teams are going to allow us to do that. I think it's going to be more of a, hey, we're going to stop the pass because we're going to take the ball out of Drake's hands as much as we can. Then the pressure is going to go to the offensive line to win the line of scrimmage and win the trenches and create those lanes for those running backs. And we've talked about it last year. Carolina was not able to run the football as successfully. And this year they've at least established that early. Didn't do so much against Minnesota, but they did against App. And I think the pressure falls back to Hampton and Brooks and possibly Elijah Green and Caleb Hood if they see a snap share there. But definitely B+ for this year or through non-conference play.
Now, I have a question. Who's the biggest benefactor from the big Nate McCollum performance?
I'm gonna say Kobe.
That's what I was gonna say. I was hoping you were gonna take the words out of my mouth.
It's got to be Kobe because he only got 1 target and 4 catches on 4 yards on one target, 1 catch and 4 yards on Saturday against Pitt or Minnesota. And I think that goes back to through 2 games. Pacer was the guy, so Minnesota was keen on him. I don't think they were prepared for McCollum, and so they took the pass away from Pacer, and obviously McCollum was wide open. So now I think you're going to start seeing teams pivot, and it's how do you key on McCollum or on Pacer? I think it's kind of like what you saw last year with Josh Downs and Antoine Green. If both of those guys can start performing on a weekly basis, Carolina can have 2 really good receivers and then mix in the tight ends occasionally.
If any defensive coordinators from the conference are listening or from Campbell, cover your ears because I'm going to tell you the game plan of how to beat Carolina. Double Nate McCollum. I don't know. If teams aren't doubling this guy after that first week, I don't know what they're doing because that's the threat. Make Kobe Pacer and J.J. Jones beat you. Make these other guys step up to the occasion. McCollum showed that he's like a Josh Downs 2.0. He's going to get his touches. But you want to limit that. Drake May was snapping the ball looking for him, and it was like playing catch. There was nobody else on the field. Teams are not going to allow that moving forward. Well,
they were
100%
playing catch, and I mean, and again, what goes forward from this, but we're not sure. We won't know till after this weekend and moving forward. But McCollum's definitely the wide receiver 1. There's no question about it. How Pacer and the offense makes adjustments will be interesting. I would expect offensive coordinator Chip Lindsey to at least have some new routes and whatnot for McCollum and Pacer, maybe some crossers between the 2. You can only double one of them. You can't double them both. So choose one, and then hopefully the other one can make some plays.
Absolutely. Now, we're getting into conference play. Pittsburgh's the first one on the schedule. They come into this game. This is not your typical Pitt team that we've seen from the past couple of years. They're 1-2, lost 2 games in a row. They had a blowout win in week 1 against Wolford, but again, strength of schedule. They lost to Cincinnati. They're coming off a loss to West Virginia. They have some quarterback issues. What are your early thoughts on the Pittsburgh Panthers?
My early thoughts is that we don't need to be overlooking nobody, just no matter what their record is, because it's Carolina football, and we've seen this in the past. Mac has talked about playing when you're on top of the mountain and playing well. So I think we still got to go in this game level headed. But the Panthers have not looked great, as you touched on. Wofford's FCS school. No offense to them, but they just don't have the scholarships or the talent to hang with Pittsburgh, who beat them 45-7. And then Cincinnati's. We don't know much about them, but looking at them, they're not that great. And then West Virginia's had some struggles. But my biggest concern with Pittsburgh is they're having quarterback controversy. And knowing what they're going to do at quarterback has been a concern, because do they stick with the transfer from Boston College, Phil Jerkovich, or do they pivot to a backup? And if they pivot to a backup, is Carolina ready? Something we've talked about in the past. We'd never know if Carolina's ready for a backup quarterback.
Now, Pat Narduzzi, the head coach of Pittsburgh, is a very loyal guy. He is one that he was being asked about it, and he was getting upset. Like, this is my guy. I'm not moving away from him. I'm not doing it. However, Phil Jerkovich has struggled. He hasn't been the guy that, is the journeyman that has the resume that he's had. Do they think he's going to turn around? I would assume so, but how long is the leash? And if you're Carolina, you got to be panicking. You have to be, because I don't want to see a backup quarterback in this game.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And Jerkovich, he's only completing 46% of his passes. I think he threw 3 picks last week against West Virginia. So the leash has to be short, you would imagine, from Pat Narduzzi, despite what he's saying to the public. He could be playing a cat and mouse game with the Tar Heel coaching staff and saying he's going to start Jerkovich, and we come out Saturday night and it's the backup. And we really don't know going forward. Jerkovich was a great quarterback at Boston College his last year and did great things for the Eagles. But I think part of the problem for Pittsburgh also falls on the offensive line. He's not being provided enough time to throw, and he's trying to make plays and just trying not to take sacks. But how the Carolina defense performs Saturday night will be taking another step toward becoming consistent.
Jerkovich is doing 2 things. 1, he's throwing to the wrong team. 2, he's taking too many sacks. 2 things that are really hurting them. And those are 2 things that Carolina could capitalize on. They do their damage when they get pressure. We've heard it. We've seen it. That's their MO right now. They got to get that pressure. Gene Chizik's going to be drawing up some defensive schemes for this to get pressure on him. They got to make it capitalize early. And you know me, I'm a big proponent of taking the ball right away and scoring. You know it. I've said it how many weeks already? We've been doing this show a couple of weeks now.
We've been on it for 3 weeks.
For 3 weeks. This week, you win the toss, defer to the second half. Why? All the Pittsburgh fans are in arms about this guy starting the game. They're saying they're going to boo him. It's going to be such an atmosphere. Let them feel that pressure early on. I give them the ball. I trust the Tar Heels defense here. Give them the ball.
Did you just say you trust the Tar Heels defense?
Yes, I do. And I do, and I'm going to regret it. I'm going to regret it. I know I am, but it's okay. I will take that chance.
Yeah, going back to the sacks, Pitt's offensive line is allowing pressure on 45% of pass dropbacks without a blitz. That is insane, terrible. One of the worst marks in the country. So people are on point. The quarterback gets the blame for all the losses. We know this. It's a team game, but the quarterback is playing basketball. Point guards get shouldered with turnovers, and football quarterbacks get shouldered with losses. But part of that's got to be on the offensive line, don't you think?
Oh, I agree with you 100%. It starts in the trenches. And that the easy one to blame, like you said, is the quarterback. And that's what everybody's looking at. They're not worried about how much time he has to throw. They're not worried that he's surrounded by guys that don't have a lot of experience. He's not responsible for the fact that his starting running back is coming off an injury and he's been on a work limit. So there's so many things that go on on a football team. And if there was a big problem where Pat Narduzzi was like, you know what? He's the problem here, then they would make the change. And I'm sure that if that becomes the situation, they will make that change. But there's so much more going on with this Pitt team that, doesn't really appear on the surface.
Yeah, and running backs coming off the injury. Pat Narduzzi said this afternoon that Rodney Hammond Jr. will be their running back will be getting a much heavier workload going forward. So I believe we'll see Pitt do something like Minnesota went into the game last week with, which is ball control. And the biggest thing with ball control is time of possession. When you're playing any team with a star player or star quarterback on offense, then obviously the best way to stop them is not have them on the field. So time of possession will be key Saturday night. Carolina did a really good job against Minnesota. They won the time of possession last week with I think 33 minutes. And so seeing how the defense stops the run game will be huge.
And that's going to be a big storyline, but I'm going to tell you, put their running back down for 100 yards. Am I allowed to say that after I just said that I trust the defense?
I was just saying, you just say you trust the defense and then follow up with they're going to give up 100 yards to one guy.
But that's okay. They gave up 100 yards last week. Look at how it turned out.
So last week they forced 2 interceptions. How many turnovers did they force this week?
1.
Is that enough to beat Pitt?
Yes. I'm gonna say 1. Okay, I don't think Jerkovich throws for 3 interceptions again. I'm gonna say 1. I think they sack him a couple of times. I think they get 3 or 4 sacks, but I think it's gonna be a lot of, trying to get the punting unit on the field.
And 3 or 4 sacks would put the Carolina defense very close to the mark they hit last year in 14 games, which is 17. So in 4 games, we're almost talking about having more sacks this year than last year. So it's no secret the Carolina defense has improved. But again, it's taking those steps forward and building on success. And that's been the challenge for the defense and for the Carolina football program as a whole. So taking that step forward and starting 1-0 in conference play and 4-0. Your favorite stat of the week has been 4-0 for the first time since 1997. So it's gonna be interesting if Carolina can win Saturday night going into this bye week.
I just have to say, I'm stunned you said it. I'm very stunned. I did not think you were going to say it. I was waiting. I did not open up with that. I was waiting. I thought that you weren't going to say it, and you did. You're learning.
I could see you just like ready to jump out of your skin, ready to say that. So I figured I'd just hand the piece of chocolate candy to you and just let you enjoy it.
That made my night. I'm gonna have to clip that, and it's gonna be my ringtone for you. It's gonna be Carolina's 4-0 for the first time since '97.
I am very superstitious. I don't want to jinx anything, but it is a fact, and it's getting over that hump. For 3 times in 4 years under Matt Brown, they've started 3-0 and then fell on their face going into week 4 or the 4th game of the year. So, what do you think Pitt's stop the pass and try to stop Drake and let Carolina run Saturday night?
Yeah, I think they're going to try to stop the run. I mean, stop the passing game and let them run. Their pass defense has been pretty good if you look at the numbers. Their rushing defense, it's been a little iffy. But I think Carolina goes into that game, and I think they try to pound it down their throats. They try to get McCollum open early, open some things up. I think, going back to your earlier point, I think this game could be one where you see a little bit of both, where it's not where they're so one-dimensional. I think that Carolina could do things in both areas.
I think that the run. I agree with you. I think Pitt's gonna try to stop the pass and keep Drake from throwing and beating them. But I think one thing I would like to see is the run game. Big runs and chunk plays are important, but running the football goes back to winning time of possession. And while Pitt's gonna try to do that, if you let Carolina run the football, they're gonna have the opportunity to use time of possession as well. Obviously, run plays take more time off the clock. You're not getting as far down the field typically. And so I think that benefits Carolina. And then if you can get Pitt off their game of stopping the run, and we didn't see it against App and we didn't see it against Minnesota where either defense tried to pivot from their game plan. They both tried to stay with their game plan. I think if you see Pitt trying to be like, all right, we can't keep giving up 7-8 yards of carry to Brooks and Hampton. We have to do something. And they're going to come up to the line of scrimmage, maybe some play action, a little RPO from Drake May. We saw that a lot with Sam Howell when he was at Carolina's RPOs. And we've not seen it as much from Drake. We've seen more of a hesitant play action. I would like to see some of that mixed into the Carolina offense.
I feel like Carolina thought that Howell was more of a runner than Drake May, and Drake May could run. Don't get me wrong, but
Oh,
I
absolutely.
feel like Howell's body physique was able to take hits better than Drake May.
Absolutely, and maybe it's attributed to no offense to Sam Howell here, but Drake May is obviously a better quarterback, and maybe trying to protect him more. He took a big shot against Minnesota early on the first drive of the game on the Minnesota sideline last week, uh, and I'm not so sure that he didn't get rocked up a little bit, and that might have contributed to one or if not both of his interceptions. He took a big lick, and keeping him upright, and we've said all year, offensive line has to keep him upright and keep him off the ground, and he's got to learn to slide and protect himself because this Carolina team goes in a totally different direction without him at the helm.
And I was just going to say that. Think about this too. When Howell was here in Chapel Hill, he had backup quarterbacks that were capable of getting the job done. You knew
Yeah,
you had Drake May. You had a guy like Jacoby Criswell that you could rely on. Who comes in if Drake May gets hurt? There's no experience
Connor Harrell,
behind them. Yeah,
Harrell's
Connor
the only guy,
Harrell, and
but
no
there's
disrespect
no
to Connor,
experience.
but there's no experience. Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's a very big risk to take if he takes a bad hit and you got to go to the bench.
and if it was in non-conference play early and you're playing a FCS or a power or a group of high school, that's one thing. Getting some reps against a Campbell or even an App State, you don't want to do that in conference play, especially when you're starting to get into. You got Pitt this week, you get a bye week, and then the schedule really gets tough from there. And into the heart of October and November with Miami coming to town, Duke comes to town, and then toward the end of the year. So you don't want Drake sending out conference play when you have probably your best chance in a long time to make a push for a conference championship.
Absolutely. Now, how do you think Saturday night goes? Carolina win this game? Carolina win this game easily? Carolina loses? What's your thought process?
I didn't go back and before our podcast, I didn't go back and look at see what my original prediction was. I think I picked us to lose this game at the beginning of the year.
I think
Uh,
I did too, so don't worry.
I'm pretty sure I did. I'm a pivot from that. Even though it's a night game, it's scary. The last two times we've went to Pittsburgh, we've went to overtime and lost both of them. It seems like all these games in this series is close, with the exception of last year, Carolina's 18-point win in Chapel Hill. It's gonna be close. I'm gonna say it's gonna be close. I hope not. It shouldn't be on paper. We've talked about Pitt's struggles, and obviously Carolina's playing well. Carolina wins the game. I'm going to say by 2 possessions, maybe 10, 14-point range. Don't be surprised if this game close going into the second half or fourth quarter.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's close either. But from the makings of it, you're looking at it from a paper perspective, from what we've seen perspective, from Pittsburgh struggles to Carolina's success. Carolina should win this game, and by multiple scores. There's no two ways about it. But you have to take in the elements. You're going on the road, first conference game. Pittsburgh's going to be motivated. It's not like they're going to just bow down to Carolina and say, look, take this game. They're trying to rewrite the ship too. They have a very good coach. They have a quarterback that's proven he could do it, just hasn't done it. They're just looking for that week where it all clicks and he gels with this team. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a close game. I really wouldn't. And I think that it's going to end up being that because, why could we have a non-stressful night? But my heart's telling me it's going to be a blowout. My gut's telling me brace up because it's going to be a long night. And I think Carolina wins this game. But
Yeah,
I do think it's going to be close.
yeah, for sure. On paper, if you look at this on paper and compare the two teams, if you took both logos off of the sheet and just looked at the stats side by side, this is a game that you're looking at like, oh, this is a 21-point game or 24-point deficit margin of victory. I don't think it's that big of a blowout. It will be nice to sit back on a Saturday night and relax and enjoy a great day of college football, and then not worry about Carolina making it close. But I think Pat Narduzzi is the factor on the sidelines. At least he's a great coach. He's really good at making adjustments and coming up with schemes to stop good quarterbacks, and then making things tough on opposing offenses. And that's where my concern lies: is are we prepared to handle what Narduzzi throws at us?
And of course, you can watch that game 8:00 Saturday night, ACC Network. It's the primetime game of the week. But of course, before we get off the topic of football, I got to ask a quick question: Clemson or Florida State?
Clemson wins. Clemson's going
You're
to win the
going.
game. I'm going Clemson's to win the game.
This is a tough one for me because I'm thinking of it in terms of Carolina, and it's such a bad way to think because obviously there's so much of the season left.
You're
But
looking ahead.
I'm looking ahead way too much. But I feel like Florida State's going to win this game.
And Florida State winning the game would help Carolina, no doubt about it. It would drop Clemson to 2 losses, and I think Carolina fans should be pulling for Florida State Saturday. But if it comes down to picking a winner, I think Clemson's a little upset with how they have been pushed off by the national media after a loss to a really good Duke team, and I think they're going to come out and try to make a statement Saturday. It's at home for the Tigers, so Florida State winning would definitely help Carolina, though.
Absolutely. And if you love college football, there's a lot of good games on this weekend. My TV's going to be on all weekend with games until Carolina leading up to that kickoff at 8 o'clock. It's actually really good Carolina's playing at 8 because you kind of can enjoy the whole day of games before the stress levels go up at night.
Yeah, I think we got Florida State Clemson at noon, and then 3 top 25 games at 3:30 and 3 at 7 o'clock. So hope you have multiple TVs or screens going on for sure. Before we go off football, what are your keys for Carolina to beat Pitt?
Okay, so my keys are going to be get to the quarterback. They need multiple sacks in this one. Offensively, somebody has to step up other than McCollum because I feel like they're just going to zero in on McCollum. I think it's a Kobe Paysour type 100-yard type of game. And then don't make dumb mistakes. Drake May made 2 dumb mistakes. They didn't hurt Carolina in that game. I don't question Drake May making those throws. I don't. I trust him. He made 2 bad mistakes. It happens. He's human. But I want to see them limit those mistakes because come conference play, those are the ones that come back to hurt you.
100%. I agree with you. I think making simple plays. I don't think we have to do anything dramatic in this game. We don't need to bring out the Wildcat or any kind of trick plays. I think you keep everything in your bag. Don't put anything on film for Syracuse or Miami coming up, and you just try to win this game with talent. And I think Carolina's by far the more talented team. So I agree. Drake taking care of the football, defense not allowing any trump plays, and offensive line just win the line of scrimmage. That's the biggest thing.
Wait, you don't want to see the Ram package?
Not this week. No,
I don't think I want to see it all year.
If we get into a situation where it's like 2nd and 4 on the goal line, I'm okay with it. On 3rd and short or 4th and short, no, I don't want to see the Ram package unless they have tweaked it and added more plays. But so far we've not seen enough plays out of that package to. It's like running the same play over and over. The other teams can pick it up eventually, and App did, and we didn't see it against Minnesota. I don't think we see it this weekend either.
I don't think so either. But before we kind of wrap up our show today, there's a couple of key bullet points that I want to talk about. Number 1, we're going to get off topic of Carolina for a minute and talk about the show because there's an important aspect that people need to know. Our show is now available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you don't like listening to video streams or you don't like sitting in front of YouTube for 40 minutes a day, you can listen to us right on your phone from the comfort of your phone. You can stream us. Make sure you follow us though and subscribe so you get all the latest news and information about our show. Nice little touch there we got, huh?
Yeah, and it's nice. You can just turn your podcast on while you're driving to work on in the mornings and just listen to it in the car, or while you're out for a walk, or if you want a little pregame, you need something to pregame, get you ready for Saturday night. Turn us on about 7 o'clock and listen to us till kickoff.
I love the sound of that. So that's the first thing. Second thing, obviously we're going to be on the air next week. It's probably going to be a little bit different because football is going to be in the bye, but we do have a big reveal on Tuesday night. Women's and men's conference schedules for basketball.
Yeah, that will be exciting. And we obviously know the opponents and the home and homes, but seeing the schedule come out for the first time is always a exciting time for Carolina basketball fans. And you get to circle key dates. When's the first Carolina Duke game? When's the first Carolina State game? We know the non-conference schedule. The men and the women have tough schedules in the non-conference. They will definitely be challenged. And as long as they win some of those games, there should be no discussion of not having enough quad 1 wins this year for either side, and put us in good position for seeding in the NCAA tournament.
and I have to bring it up because you sent it to me the other day, and you could talk about it a little bit more. I'm putting you on the spot. There was a women's bracketology early, and let me tell you, Carolina's bracket was brutal.
Yeah, Charlie Cream does not like the Tar Heels, and neither does the NCAA. Apparently, after last year's 6th seed, when we thought they were in line to host as a 4, and got sent to Columbus as a 6th seed, like insane. But right now, the bracketology has the women as a 5 seed in the number 1 bracket, which I think was LSU, and that's just tough. Even imagining playing them in round 2, obviously defending national champions, and would definitely be tough. Obviously, it's early, it's preseason. It's just something fun to look at for fans. But hopefully, the Tar Heels can make a statement in the non-conference and put some of this to bed with being disrespected.
Yeah, for me, I have faith in Courtney Banghart and the Lady Tar Heels. I do. But I was just looking at that. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's a gauntlet. And especially because their schedule is so tough throughout the season. It's no slouch. So you're going in, you're playing these games. Obviously, your high seed is going to be because you beat some of those teams. And then you go into the tournament and you're going to have to face Angel Reese and Haley Van Lith at LSU. That's a toughie. Not that they can't do it, but that's tough.
Yeah, and 2 of those players were projected in the top 7 or 8 of the latest WNBA mock draft. So you're talking about playing a loaded team plus 2 players in the top 8 of the draft. So projected.
Plus a very good coach.
Yeah, and a very good coach. Kim Mulkey's phenomenal. Was great at Baylor, and would be tough. But obviously, speculation. We don't know if the Tar Heels will see LSU or not. It'd be nice to see them further down the road, maybe in the Final Four in Cincinnati or something.
I agree with you there. And then the last bullet point that I have, we talked about it earlier between me and you, but there's 2 teams on campus that deserve a lot of love that aren't really getting that love.
Absolutely. The Carolina men's and women's soccer teams are playing really well. Both are undefeated. Both have a few ties, but the women's soccer team is number 1 in the country. The men's soccer is undefeated. They're one of 3 programs in the country that are undefeated on both sides. And that's something that needs to be shouted out for sure. The women are actually up 1-0 right now against Virginia. We're recording this on Thursday night. So, playing the second conference game of the year and already trending toward another win would be huge.
Yeah, they're both looking great. And of course, if you're on campus and you're looking for something to do or you're around Chapel Hill, go check them out. They got some good talent on those rosters, and they're not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, and we all know that UNC women's soccer is traditionally a powerhouse, but they've not shied away from scheduling either. There's got to be something said for the Carolina Athletic Department as a whole, scheduling tough games. The women's soccer program scheduled the toughest schedule in the country, and went to South Carolina, to Alabama. Both are top 10 programs. Played USC at home, and then ACC is obviously loaded. So shout out to Bubba Cunningham and the Carolina Athletic Department for actually not shying away from competition.
Absolutely. Never back down from the competition. Jordan, final thoughts for tonight's show.
Final thoughts. It's a great time to be a Tar Heel fan, and obviously we're inching closer to basketball, but we're getting in the heart of football season. It's exciting. Chance to be 4-0 for the first time in 25 years come Saturday night. It'll be a big one, and let's not sleep on the Panthers and go Heels.
Absolutely. Nobody sleep on the Panthers. Hopefully Carolina comes in, takes care of business, and gives us something to rejoice about going into that bye week. It's gone well so far. They got to just keep it going into conference play, and they'll have another week to kind of reset after, which will be great.
Yeah, the bye week comes at a good time. I mean, we're not really banged up at the moment, at least with injuries. So that's always like a key factor with the bye week. But we've played 3 really tough opponents, and then obviously conference games. So it does come at a good time, and then get ready to go into October. But I'd love to be able to sit back on my Saturday night and relax and watch Carolina football and have a 3-possession comfortable lead going to the 4th quarter, and the defense show up for once, and just put this thing to bed early, and let's move to 4-0.
Absolutely. That's going to wrap it up for episode 4 of the Talkin' Heels podcast. That guy is Jordan Foles. I'm Nick Delahanty. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week. hopefully we have some more excitement coming from Chapel Hill. As always, go Heels, free Tez. Talk to you guys really soon.
Free Tez, go Heels.